Today, with that, we're going to cover quite a few topics. And in general, we're going to talk about budgeting, what is credit cards, debt to income ratios, debt reduction strategies, and credit scores. So let's go ahead and dig in. So, there's one reason why we speak about budgeting first. Budgeting is the foundation for making any financial plan succeed. Budgeting is going to help you to identify your available cash flow. And that cash flow is really the key to how you attack debt. We had a question. One of the poll questions was about budgeting, and why don't people do a budget? And really, there's no correct answer to that. It's however you feel. So it was nice to see out of the 5 responses, it was spread out fairly evenly. So that's really kind of a neat thing to see. People feel differently and have different reasons for that. As far as budgeting, you want to avoid all bad debt together. If you can swing it, you might try to challenge yourself by not spending anything for a month. That might sound like a long time, or maybe even just 2 weeks. It's really interesting when you do that. You can really, really tell the amount of transactions that you go through every day without thinking about it. So give yourself a little experiment. Go ahead and give that a try. Secondly, you want to identify the money, money coming in versus the money being spent. Tracking expenses, it's, at a minimum, you want to use at least 30 days of your previous expenses to do that. But really, 60 to 90 days is preferable. It gives you a better data set. It gives you a more average or a better data set for you to see what your average spending is over time when you're trying to make a budget. You can do this tracking by, you can review your credit card statements, your bank statements, any bills or any receipts that you have. One of the quickest ways to address any of the overspending is to give yourself some options for spending. You want to make sure that, that you're not spending any more money that you're taking in. And that's something that's very obvious, right? You would think that that's an obvious thing, but many people live in deficit. When you're done creating your budget, you will know what your cash flow is. You'll know if you're positive or negative, and then that'll give you the emphasis to do something with that data that you get. Cash flow, is going to be my magic word throughout this presentation. Cash flow equals power. Use your newfound power to control where your money goes. And that's how you manage your debt, so your debt does not manage you. So let's talk about some of the negatives about budgeting. A lot of people, when you say budgeting, it's like going to the dentist. They feel like, oh, I don't want to do that every month. It's kind of hard. It takes up time. But overcoming your perceived notions is very, very important. A lot of people feel like, I don't have the time. It's too labor intensive. It's too complicated. These are all things that, with the help of a financial coach like myself, you can overcome, and part of it, some of that leads to the lack of motivation, lack of motivation. And when you create a budget and you're identifying where your money is going, it can actually be a motivator to you. Also, prioritizing your financial goals in life and working towards them can also help you keep motivated. So it kind of helps with that lack of motivation of doing that budget. Don't set unrealistic expectations or goals of yourself. One of the things that I always like to talk to people about is, I never recommend doing anything cold turkey or just, I'm cutting out everything. A good example of this is eating out. If you go to work every day and you eat out for lunch every day, you go to Chick-fil-A, spend, $10, $15 a day, that can get very expensive over time. One thing that you can do, though, is you can cut those 5 days a week of eating out down to 3 days a week. Say you eat out on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you brown bag it on Tuesday and Thursday. Well, you have just reduced your eating out budget by 40% throughout the whole year. That's a pretty big reduction for a small sacrifice. So it's, you just don't want to go cold turkey. One of the reasons why people or budgets fail, or people don't like doing budgets, is that they feel like it's not, they don't like doing the not automated. Well, there's a lot of apps out there that actually automate your budgeting process. They take all your financial data and they put it into a spreadsheet for you. For me, I really recommend, for some people who are very busy, this is a great time saver and it's crucial for their success. But what I really believe is that the manual input of a budget really helps you to identify where the money is going. And it helps you to come to the realization that too much money is going out. And it helps you to know and focus on the goals that you've set for yourself. And then the last thing, why budgets sometimes are negative or fail is that, there's sometimes a lack of guidance. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of great programs out there. There's a lot of great apps out there. They have a lot of good information. But, the thing that's not available with some of those applications is that when you get into a rut, there's usually no one there to help keep you on track. There's no one there to give you a pep talk. There's no one there to help you refocus on what your goals are. So that guidance can be a really, really important part of the budgeting process, especially if you feel like you're on your own. But if you have a coach like myself, it's really easy to keep that focus going. So let's talk a little bit about credit. So, credit is a really important part of what's happening in your budgeting. What is credit? It's a certain borrowed sum of money to purchase goods and services. And the creditor has the expectation of getting a future payment back. So whether you're borrowing $10 from your buddy or $2,000 for the furniture that you furnished your living room with, you've now created a credit relationship with another person. So other types of credit are like credit cards, and there's definitely some advantages of having credit cards. One of the advantages that a lot of people like is the ability to buy things you need right now. Okay, credit cards provide that convenience. Building a credit history is also an advantage of having credit cards. Using credit cards properly can have a positive impact on your credit score. You don't have to carry cash or checkbooks. So if you have a credit card, obviously you don't have to worry about that. It provides a level of safety. And normally you're usually not liable, depending on the credit card company, for unauthorized purchases. This making charges on a credit card also creates a record of your purchases. That can become really handy. Having your credit card statement offers you a great way to use that statement to help you with your budgeting process. So you have that data, it's going to be right there in one place to help you complete that. And then also, lastly, there's cash and there's cash back and points. Now this can be really, really good or really, really bad. So if you're the type of person that pays on time and pays in full every month, you could really accumulate enough money or points to fund, say, a holiday like Christmas or do some travel or anything like that. So cash back and points can be really good. But if you don't do that on time, you're just going to deplete the amount of goodwill that you've earned by earning those and being disciplined for some of the months, but not some of the other months. So it's really important that you make sure that you're doing a good job being disciplined in that respect. So some of the disadvantages of credit cards. So, interest charges can be really high. They can be as high as 29.9%. An example of this, say you had $1,000 balance, that balance to carry would cost you $25 every month at 29.99%. That equals out to $300 a year. So you're paying that much more money every month and every year just to carry that balance. What could you do with an extra $25 a month? You could start putting that toward your retirement. You could start funding emergency savings. You could do a lot of things with that extra $25 a month. So that's some of the things that is a benefit or a negative, a disadvantage there, but can be a positive if you take care of that. Also, annual fees. Some of the annual fees on credit cards can be as much as $100 a month just for the privilege of having the credit card. Now, you might get some cash back or some bonus or some travel points or miles, but if you're not paying in full every month, you're going to deteriorate or erode those gains that you would get from that, and you end up, paying on that. And that's what the credit card companies are gambling on. They're gambling on you not being disciplined and you not taking your time and making sure that you're doing all those things that you need to do. One of the things that credit cards allow you to do is buying things that you can't afford. Um, just because you have a credit line or open balance on your credit card account, you can purchase whatever it is that you want to, as long as it doesn't exceed that credit card limit. You have to ask yourself, are you living above your means? You can really, really get into trouble quickly here with doing this type of thing. And then missed payments and maxed out cards. Missed payments or maxed out cards, they're gonna have a negative impact on your credit score, and that's really important if you're trying to make some purchases in the future where you don't have a great credit history because you didn't take care of business. So those are some disadvantages that you might come across. So some of the tips for using credit cards, don't think of credit cards as extra money. Did you know that you are 10 to 15% less likely to make a purchase if you use cash versus credit? And the reason why that is, it's a tangible exchange of money. You're taking that money is leaving your hand and it's going to the vendor. When you use credit, it's really easy. Swipe, input your number. You don't see the bill until it comes 30 days later. You are immediately seeing that bill right now when you use cash. So if you can, try to use cash when you're purchasing something. That'll keep your credit card balance low. One of the second questions on the poll that we did was, what was the average U.S. household credit balance? And I think about half of the folks got it in between that 5,000 and 10,000 rate, which is it's $8,089 per year. So if you're carrying that $8,089 per year, if you carry that balance on the average credit card, it would cost you about $150 a month to carry that balance. What could you do with $150 extra a month? Could that be going towards, things like paying down your student loans, paying off other debt? And just to take it one step further, that $150 a month is $1,800 a year for carrying that balance. Think about those numbers. Those are kind of mind-blowing. So, the choices that you make, are going to affect, your ability to purchase of a home, or a car, or other major purchases. The better you manage your credit, the less expensive that credit is going to become for you in the future. So let's talk about some of the uses of credit. There are some good uses and there's some not so good uses. On the good side, buying a home, financing higher education, and to somewhat of an extent, purchasing of a vehicle. That doesn't mean go out and purchase, the most expensive vehicle, the sportiest vehicle that you can, but you're going to need a vehicle for some certain things. So, those good things, those are considered the necessities in life. If you're purchasing a home, that's housing. That's going to give you somewhere to live. If you're financing higher education, your education could lead to a degree, which is going to lead you to a better job. And if you're purchasing a vehicle for reliable transportation, then you're able to get to that job that you just got with your degree that you finance. So these are some purchases that are not necessarily, you don't want to do a lot of them, but if you do have to, they can come in the good side of the ledger. Now, not so good side or not so good uses, using credit cards and carrying a balance. Also, financing a purchase for longer than the life of that particular asset. Think about this. Say that you have $10,000 in credit card balance and you get an inheritance of $10,000. Well, one thing you could do is you can pay off the credit card balance and you can then tell yourself, hey, I did a great thing. I got my credit down. I decreased my debt. I'm doing better with my credit score. I'm doing a lot of good things. But the one thing that you're gonna that ends up happening, and I'm only giving you this example because this was me. I got an inheritance of $10,000. I had $10,000 in credit card debt. I paid it off, and I can't believe, I thought I would be happy. It was a very, very disappointing feeling for me. And the reason why is because, I just wanted, I didn't have anything tangible to show for it. I didn't have a home to show for it. I didn't have a degree to show for it. And I didn't have reliable transportation. That really empty feeling, even I had that really empty feeling, even though it was something that was very successful for me to do. So let's also talk about, some debt management here. So some key components of, debt management. We're going to talk about credit. We're going to talk about credit scores. We talked about budgeting a little bit, and so forth, as you can see here. One size does not fit all. Everybody has a different situation. Everybody has different types of credit. And also, you want to, no matter what your debt level, it can be addressed with goals, prioritization, and a plan. So let's talk a little bit about debt to income ratio. What is a debt to income ratio? Simply, it's how much you owe compared to how much you earn. Now, most experts say that, no more than 28% of your gross monthly income should be used for your housing expenses. In other words, whatever your mortgage is costing you shouldn't be more than 28% of what your gross income is, and whether that's rent or that's mortgage. Now, gross is everything that you earn before any deductions. Secondly, the second part of that debt to income ratio is no more than 36% of your gross monthly income should go towards all reoccurring debt. So that's everything other than your housing expenses. So automobiles, any other credit cards, or any other things that you might have. If you notice, if you add those two together, that's 64% of your income already. And then you have 34% or 36% to, do the rest of your life, pay taxes, pay for your children's education, any trips, vacations, or any of those other kinds of things. So, most of the time, this debt to income ratio is used for qualifying for a mortgage. So don't cut yourself short by having high amounts of debt so you don't qualify for a home or have to take a couple of years to sacrifice to get down below this debt to income ratio amount or limit. So let's talk a little bit about some tips for getting out of debt. The first thing that you're going to want to do, and this kind of goes back to one of the poll questions, which was, what's the first step in a debt strategy? Prioritizing expenses was one of the choices. Unfortunately, it's not the first thing. The first thing is creating a budget. That's why we talked about budgeting first. Second thing is from that budget, you're going to find that you're going to find that you can prioritize your fixed expenses, your variable expenses, periodic, and discretionary. What are those different things? Well, your fixed, variable, and periodic debt most of the time consists of your essentials. Examples are rent, utilities, and insurance. But discretionary expenses is just that. It's up to you. It's up to your discretion whether you activate that expense or not. Examples of discretionary expenses are groceries, Netflix, lotteries, dining out. And I put lotteries in there and people laugh at me, but I've had people add those on there every month. They're buying $25 worth of lottery tickets. What's surprising to me, but everybody has their discretion on what they feel is important to them. So you can have all these discretionary expenses, but those are the places where you have total control over what you spend. The other three, fixed, variable, and periodic, to somewhat of a degree, you have a little bit of control, but you're pretty much going to have to pay for somewhere to live. You're pretty much going to have to pay for food. You're pretty much going to have to pay for housing and medical and those kinds of things. So those aren't discretionary. It's just being efficient in your expenses there. You always want to, another tip for getting out of debt is you always want to pay above the minimum. I mean, I think that goes without saying, but really it's important. I talked to somebody today who told me that, I didn't know that if I didn't pay off more than the minimum that, there was interest charge on it. I thought if I paid off the minimum at some point in time, I was going to relieve all my debt. And that is true to a point. It just takes years, and that's not a way to live. And the credit card company makes quite a bit of money on that. You also want to pay off your debt early if possible. That's going to help you in a number of ways. It's going to free up a cash flow, again, my magic word, to help you decide and be in control of where that money goes. And then also try to pay your debt off in full. If you plug into these tips, you will create cash flow. And that cash flow is going to equal the power, and that power is going to equal control. And that control is going to let you control your debt and not let your debt control you. And again, and that's going to be a central theme of this whole thing. So other tips of getting out of debt. So many of you have heard about the snowball method. What is the snowball method? It's kind of a way of you prioritizing how you pay off your debt. So with the snowball method, you pay off your smallest debt balance first. Once that total debt is paid off, you then roll that payment amount into the next smallest debt balance by adding that previous payment that you just paid off into the current payment. So for example, if your first or highest debt was $100 and you finish paying that off, you take that $100, you roll it into the next debt, or you might have a minimum payment of $50, and now you're making a $150 payment towards that second debt. You keep doing that until you pay that off, you get that win, and then you go on to the next one. And you do that until you eliminate all your debt. That's kind of the snowball method. That's probably the most popular of the two methods that we're going to talk about today. This is a technique that helps keep you engaged, because if you have some smaller balances, if you can get those off the books, those are wins, those are successes, and those successes will keep you going. If you have two small balances and you're able to pay those off in 2 or 3 months, wow, you've already made really, really good progress, and you have created cash flow for yourself. Again, magic word, cash flow, to put that cash flow towards the next debt. So you're really making a lot of progress when you do that. You're even, you're creating cash flow every time you do this. And any debt reduction that you master or you have a victory with, no matter how small, is a win. Even if you had like a minimum $25 payment, you actually gain more than that $25 payment when you pay off a debt, because if you were carrying credit balance on that, you were paying interest charges on top of that. So no longer are you paying for those interest charges and that minimum $25 payment. That is now available and freed up as cash flow to move on to the next debt. So even small wins are good wins, and they all add up. So let's talk about the debt avalanche method. What is that? Well, it's very similar, but has a little bit of different components to it. So you pay off the highest interest rate debt first, not the smallest balance, but the highest interest rate debt first. Once you pay that off, you take that payment and roll it into the second one, just like in the previous example, and so on and so on. This type of method is usually for the more disciplined person. And the reason why is because wins are fewer and further in between. But they usually are bigger wins. A good example of this is if you had a payment of, say, $275 on one particular credit card. Once you've paid off that debt, you get to apply that $275 towards your next highest debt level. And that's a big amount to be transferring over. It's not a minimum 25 payment or even 50 or even $100. So you can see that making that first win or completion in the avalanche method really gives you a big chunk of money to pay towards the next debt. So these are just two methods that you can use, but the key is just to always pay off more than what you're doing. Also, if you have auto pay, take advantage of that. Auto pay is really good just for the simple fact that it keeps you from being tempted to spend your money on stuff. And the reason why I say stuff is, you know what stuff is. It's all that stuff at the checkout line. It's all that stuff that you really don't need, but you get it anyway. Auto pay is really good for putting your money out of sight, which equals money out of mind. If you don't have the money in there to do it, you're not going to spend the money. You've already targeted that money to make some debt relief. So don't buy that stuff. So other things that you can do, there's debt consolidation, there's 0% transfer balances. You may find an offer that offers you 0% for a specific term, but you have to be very careful to know and understand all of those terms. If you miss just one payment on one of those structures, or if you're late even by just one day on those terms, you could end up paying more than the original terms of the debt that you actually consolidated. So you have to be really careful about those kinds of offers. You could consider refinancing your debt. You could go to your bank or credit union, take out a personal loan and roll all that debt, use that loan to pay off all the debt that you have. If you have a decent relationship with your, if you have decent credit and you have a long-term relationship with your banking institution or financial institution, this may not be the lowest interest rate that you have, but it'll be a lower rate than usually what you're paying with your debt. And it does give you the opportunity to make those payments consolidated. And many times those payments will be less than what your total payments would have been with the other amounts of debt that you did not consolidate. Also, you can try working with your creditors. Sometimes it may be beneficial for you to reach out to your creditors to see if you can restructure any of the terms of your debt. You have nothing to lose here. All they can say is no. And where are you? You really didn't lose anything. Just maybe the few minutes that it took for you to get that appointment to talk to that person. So working with your creditors can also be a benefit. So third-party debt management programs. So there's credit counseling agencies. They will contact your lenders. They may be able to lower your credit rates. They may be able to change your credit card structure or credit payment structure. These companies, they can collect a single payment and then allocate that payment to your creditor. So they make that payment for you, which helps you be on time. So these are some good things about, third-party debt management programs. But in my dealings with most folks is that these programs end up costing quite a bit of money. And the results are, mixed. One of the things I would suggest is to save that money that you would be paying to these debt management programs and apply that money toward your own debt. Work with somebody like a financial coach like myself, who's going to help, who's going to help you along the way and give you the resources that you need. Somebody like, the coaches that we have, we're free. It doesn't cost you anything. It's a resource that's available to you because of the benefits you have through FinPass. So that's something that you can use and not have to pay anybody to do that, but help you accomplish your goals. This is a really, really good opportunity to take, to take the opportunity to change your life on how you approach your expenses and spending. Managing, if you do that, managing your debt, you're not going to let that debt manage you again. So other things we can talk about today, credit scores. Credit score is your reputation to lenders. It tells how likely you are to pay back the money that you borrow. Credit scores can range anywhere from 350 to 800, and there's 3 different credit reporting bureaus currently. Higher credit scores, if you have those, they lower the cost to borrow money. They also lower the interest rates on any credit that you have, credit cards that you apply for. And then also, if you have a high credit score, you have probably proven your credit worthiness to be less of a risk because of your actions and the things that you do to pay off debt and to repay any credit that you've already been a part of. So some of the factors that are associated with credit scores. So paying your bills on time is really, really important. I'm hoping everybody can hear me because I'm getting an unstable internet connection. So somebody let me know, Ray, let me know if we're not being
All good,
able
sir.
to.
All good.
Okay, good. So paying your bills on time. Creditors like to know, they're kind of funny that way. They like to know that they're getting their money back on the agreed upon date. So, really focus on that. What is the total amount of available credit being used? So your utilization is really important. If you have multiple credit cards and multiple debt streams or debt lines out there, and you are maxed out on all of those streams, your utilization is through the roof. You really want to keep your utilization down below 30%. So that's having 70% of your credit availability open. For really, really good credit, you want to keep it under 10%. So the higher the amount of open space on your credit line, the more beneficial it's going to be for you. Also, your length of credit history. The longer you've had credit is also a factor in increasing your credit score. So, if you have a credit card that might have a really, really high interest rate, it may be less beneficial to close that account, but to use it very rarely, say once a year, to maybe go out to dinner or something, use that credit card, pay it off, put it back in the drawer, use that credit card again the next year. The reason why is because that credit history, if you had it since you were in college and you're now, in your 50s like me, you've had that credit card for 30 years. And even though it's not a low interest rate, it's helping you on your credit score because of your credit history. You've established that you can have credit for a long period of time. Again, that's going to be beneficial to you. There's obviously a bunch of different types of credit that you can have: credit cards, auto loans, student loans. A mix is okay as long as you're meeting, the minimum terms of each one of those credit instruments that you do have. And then also credit inquiries really can cause some havoc on your credit score. So, credit inquiries can really indicate financial hardship. If you're having multiple inquiries within one period year, the credit card algorithms and folks feel like, well, maybe you're having troubles. Why are you applying for so much credit? Are you in some type of emergency situation? Are we going to be able to get paid back? So those inquiries really, really can have a negative effect on your credit. If you are going to apply for a credit card or two, or you get all these things in the mail, be really, really selective about how you do that and when you do that. Usually if you have two or less, it's okay in a calendar year. But every time you go to Discount Tire and they say, if you use our credit card, we're going to give you 20% off your purchase. Well, that's a credit inquiry that's going to happen. And if you do the same thing at somewhere else, same thing. So it's in a rolling year, so they do come off within a year. But again, you just have to be wary of that. So let's talk a little bit about the ranges and what is good credit. So 800 and above, that's basically perfect. 801 and above, excuse me. 800, 751 to 800, that's usually excellent. I'm not going to go through each one. You can kind of read them for yourself and put yourself in whatever position that you're in there. But you can see it gives you kind of a goal. Where do I need to be? Where do I need to be to have good credit? One example I can give you is if you're purchasing a home, you're getting ready to purchase a home. If you have 750 or 740 or above, usually that's the least credit score that you should have to get some of the best opportunities or the lowest interest rates available for yourself. So that would be the good to excellent credit rating there. I know it says 721, but 740 for buying a home. So something to shoot for if that's something that you're looking to do. Your credit score is critical. You can get it for free on Credit Karma or annualcreditreport.com. But the cost of borrowing, or even the worst case scenario of carrying a credit balance, can be the difference in your life of surviving or thriving. Surviving is just living paycheck to paycheck, but thriving, you're able to have cash flow. You're able to do things because you don't have a lot of debt. So, the way that you have the ability to acquire credit really can be a big part of your living situation. So what I want to say is, this can be a little bit monotonous when you're doing these budgets and you're doing all these things and you're being disciplined, but never give up. You are in control now. If you buy into and execute these topics in this presentation that we talked about, you will successfully create a budget. You will know and understand how credit works. You'll have a plan to reduce your debt. Having a plan is a big part of why people fail. They don't have a plan. You will now have created cash flow. Again, my magic word, cash flow. Cash flow equals power. Power equals control. Because of your discipline doing the above acts and your efforts through your journey, you will now have positively affected your credit score without even knowing it, because you're paying your debts off on time. You're making your ratio lower. you're doing all the right things to get you in a place where you have better power and control. When you do all those things, you have now managed, yet not managed, mastered your debt. And your debt will no longer manage you because you're in control. So, it's really important to try to follow these steps and to do these things to get a hold of that situation. So, I can go ahead, and this is the lawyer stuff, so I can go ahead and read this, but I'm sure that you guys have better things to do, and you might want to get more to the Q&A portion of this. So I'm going to go ahead and skip through that. But before we do that, I just want to tell you about our Facebook group. It's called Money Megaphone. We'd like to invite each one of you to join this Facebook group, tongue twister. This group is moderated by TCG, and it's open to discussing all matters about money. So here you can vent, you can chat, you can get support from your friends or other members when it comes to any financial situation that you do have. Sorry about that. To join, just go ahead and look for the QR code here, or get on Facebook and search Money Megaphone. We really believe that no one should have to face their finances alone. They should have somebody to go to, somebody to reach out to, somebody that they can feel comfortable with talking about the issues that they have and the specifics that they have. In a large forum like this, it's really hard to do that. But when you have the opportunity to speak to a coach and get your questions answered, it can really be powerful for you and not leave you wondering, and give you some momentum to help start tackling your own debt. With that, I'm going to pass that over back to Ray for the Q&A. Here's my information. So I am a financial coach. So I saw on the folks that joined, there's plenty of you folks that I know I've already had contact with, and some that I hope to have contact with in the future. So use this information that you have here on the screen to contact me if you'd like to set up an individual coaching session. And again, because this is a benefit to you, there's no fee, whether it takes us 1 session, 3 sessions, or 5 sessions. With that, Ray, I'd like to turn it over to you for the Q&A.
Daryl, thank you for a great presentation. I think I'm going to stop buying lottery tickets starting next week, and hopefully I don't leave any money on the table there. As we move on to Q&A, want to remind people who have joined us that you can still submit questions using the Q&A section here in your window. And if, like I said, if you're on Facebook live, you can also submit questions there, and we'll ask those here in a second. I also want to announce that we're about to launch another poll. So the second poll is going to be really helpful for us as we start to create new courses and figure out the direction of what to cover next. This is really important for us. So we encourage you guys to also fill out that poll, and that should now be live for those of you joining us here through Zoom. Daryl, the first question that I'll ask you actually comes from Facebook. The question says, which of the credit bureaus is the most important?
Well, I think I'm going to give a cop-out answer on that because they're all important. Really, if you're on the verge or you're trying to purchase, like I mentioned about purchasing a home, and one of your credit bureaus says you're 735 and the other one says you're 750, the one that's more important is the one that's 735, because they're going to take an aggregate of those credit bureaus. And if you're below that 740 line, you may have to pay more for the credit that you're borrowing. So getting that lower one up is really, really important when you're doing a specific purchase like that. So I don't think there's one that's more important than each other. And they all use a little bit different algorithms and how they figure out how they judge what your credit worthiness is. So, one could be higher one month and lower the next month. So it really just, you want to try to get that average. If you think about the 3 of them, add them up, divide them by 3 and see what your average is, but really focus on the lower one. And there's plenty of easy ways that, in a coaching session, we could discuss how you can improve your credit rating if you are on the edge of one level to another one.
Awesome, Daryl. Thank you for that answer. This next question says, what should I pay off first, credit cards or student loans?
So the way that I would tackle that is, it really depends to me on what is the interest rate involved in both of those two instruments that you're asking about. Normally, student loan interest rates are on the low side, usually less, in this day and age, less than 5%. If you can borrow credit at a low rate like that, that may be the one thing that you want to do. And then, not to depend on the government, but there's programs coming out through the government about debt and student loan relief. So if you're paying off your student loans, you may not be able to take advantage of that because the amount that you have out may be less than what they're giving. I know right now they're talking about a $10,000 student loan relief. That would help a lot of people. And if you have a $10,000 balance, it wipes you right up to zero. You could have used that money to pay off maybe your credit card that you were putting towards your student loan. Also, you may want to take advantage, like right now until September 30th, by putting your loans in deferral right now, because there's no interest being charged on those because of the stimulus package that's coming out and the COVID relief and so forth. So you can really take that extra cash flow, again, magic word, you can take that cash flow and apply that payment that you may have made towards your student loan and maybe pay off that credit card that you're asking about, having an opportunity to pay down that debt. So when you do have to turn your student loan payments back on, you now have eliminated that credit card debt, and you can put those payments towards your student loan when you have to start paying it again.
Great answer, Daryl. And actually, this question that was asked is probably around that same answer, but it says, when I get the next stimulus check, what's the best way to spend it?
So I always think about this, and I think one of the reasons why the government is putting out the stimulus check, obviously, is to help people, but it's also to spur the economy, get people back working. So it has a couple of different features. When I think about the stimulus check, I don't qualify for it, but some folks around me do, and I encourage them to think about using that in a very, very productive way. Not buying something if you can afford not to. I mean, if you've been doing without and it's causing you health issues or has to do with housing, I mean, yes, by all means, use that for those things. But the one thing that I would think about doing is taking care of debt. Maybe even making it an emergency fund. So if something happens and prolongs this COVID situation, maybe you've got an emergency fund there that you didn't have before that you can go to when things get rough. Maybe you have a temporary lapse in your job, or maybe even you are, your hours are cut down. You would have that emergency fund available to you. My, again, just roundabout answer is try not to spend it if you can at all possible not spend it, and put it towards either an emergency fund or paying down some of your higher interest rate debt, whatever that high interest rate debt is.
Great, Daryl. Thank you. I see one more question, and again, we encourage folks to submit questions, even if we can't get to it today. We'll certainly follow up via email. But this last one, Daryl says, I heard it's better to carry a balance than to have a zero balance for my credit cards. Is that true?
I disagree with that statement. Having a zero balance shows that you have a great credit utilization availability, which is also a factor. The thing that can hurt you negatively is to not make that charge on that credit card periodically. So credit card companies will, monitor the activity on your credit card, and if you're not using it for a number of months, they may decide to cancel that credit card. But I kind of want to say this, and I'm kind of joking, but they're greedy, like a lot of companies. They want you to spend on that card, so they're probably not going to cancel it, but they may raise your interest rate. They may do other things if you're not utilizing that credit card. So you can be very disciplined in this. You can, hey, maybe when you do your oil changes, that's the credit card that you use, and then you pay it off. One little task just to keep that credit card active. But no, it does not affect you negatively. It's a good thing to have zero debt if you can afford to do that.
Awesome, Daryl. There's actually two more that just came in. So one is funny, but one that I think is pretty relatable. It says, what if my family won't stick to my financial plan?
Well, it's I hear you, and I deal with this quite a bit. If you have to think about it, and when you say family, I'm gonna just make an assumption that that you're married, and when you're married, you should have a partnership. So this is something that I feel like if you do a budget, a manual budget, I really promote manual budgets instead of the automated. And the reason why is because you can really, really detail where your money is going. And if you're able to show where your money is going to your partner who doesn't want to participate in that plan, it may change his mind. You can really, really identify. It's like, wow, I didn't know we spent that much money on groceries, or I didn't know that we spent that much money on eating out. We eat out, we do this, we do that a couple times, a week. We'll add it all up and see what that total is. And I think when you see that, your partner may have a change of heart, or may think, hey, maybe we can cut back on that, or maybe I can have a meeting of the minds, kind of come to the middle. Like I said earlier, you don't want to go cold turkey and make your partner totally cut out everything they're doing. I gave the eating out for lunch example. You're doing it 5 days a week. You don't want to make that person not be able to eat out to lunch all 5 days a week, but maybe they can do it 3 or 4 times. Even if you eat out 4 times, that's a 20% reduction in what you did. It's a small sacrifice, but it's getting you closer to your goal. And then you can work on that person. Okay, this year we did it 3 times. Let's do it 2 times next year. Next year, let's do it, and you work on that person. But again, it's a partnership. So you have to try to think about it as a partnership, and you guys got to be on the same page. And you can do a lot of things, and you can subtly make changes even without them knowing. They don't always have to be informed of the changes that you're making. You just need to make sure that you're doing what's right for your family. And again, if you're cutting it if you're being too strict on it, it's not going to be success. It's not going to be a success for you, and it's not going to be a success for your partner. So you want to make sure that you've got some buy-in, and you give a little bit and they give a little bit, and you come to some meeting of the minds where you're both on that same page.
Well, I'm not married, but I took some good notes for when I do have a spouse. So good answers there. I also want to announce that we've gotten some questions about the poll, but the last question doesn't let you select multiple answers. Sorry about that. Just submit the one that you guys think is the best, the most applicable, and we'll make some changes there for the future polls. Daryl, this last question is a good one. I'm wondering this too, your thoughts. It says, what improves credit score more? Paying off a credit card in full, getting current on a larger credit card, or paying off an auto loan?
So if you're getting current, I would think getting current on a credit card, because getting current infers to me that you're late, or you've missed payments, or maybe you're having issues paying off that credit card. So you're getting negative reports on that one that is not current. That would be the one that I would focus on first. But all of those things, paying off any one of those three is going to help improve your credit rating. Creating that smaller utilization rate, in other words, opening up your credit line, can also improve that. A thing that you can do, and I've talked to people about doing this, is you can contact your credit card company and you can say, hey, the reason why I'm at my credit limit is because I do a lot of transactions, and this credit limit isn't high enough for me. Can it be raised? They may look into your income. If you can verify income, they may raise that credit limit. So if you had an $8,000 balance on a $10,000 credit card, and they raised it to $20,000, you just went from 80% utilization down to 40% utilization. That helps your credit score, just by getting that raised. But also, what we're talking about is paying down that credit. If you're paying down your $8,000, you pay it down to $5,000, you went from 80% to 50% on that $10,000 credit limit. So all of those things happen, but the one I would suggest is the one that you said, getting current. If it's not current, if it's not on time, if you haven't been paying that one on time, do that. Make sure that one gets current, and keep that one current, and keep all the rest of them current at the same time.
Well, Daryl, thank you so much for all those great answers. Right before we finish, just a couple reminders for folks. I just put in the chat some good links for everybody. First, we encourage you guys to join the Facebook group, Money Megaphone. You guys can ask a lot more questions in there. I also included a link to schedule a meeting with Daryl, so you can just click that and access it. And then I also included a link for next month's webinar or course, so that folks can participate. Remember that we also give away a gift card to one participant every time we have one of these courses. So after the meeting is done, we'll pull the list and select somebody at random. So if you want to participate in that, make sure you attend. Daryl, thank you so much for all that information. And again, thank you everybody for your time this evening.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.